It's rarely the information or the intensity that makes things hard. It's the sticking with it that makes it hard. And so the desire that we have to quit is simply breaking the consistency. And so that's why consistency has always been the hardest thing for most people to achieve. But the intensity of what you have to do to be successful is much lower than most people expect.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes they suffer significantly more in a short period of time than is required to be successful over a much longer period of time with a much lower intensity. And so it's just like if you walk for 5 minutes a day, you're going to get, 50% of the health benefits, probably more than that, I'm sure, of just even exercising. You add 10 years to your life if you walked 5 or 10 minutes a day. And the path of personal development is befriending uncertainty. And so I obviously sit from the entrepreneurial perspective, but almost all decisions that you make in the beginning, you have incomplete data and you have to make decisions anyways. And so it's growing comfortable with taking your best bad guess and being directionally correct rather than searching for a perfect answer, because a perfect answer assumes perfect information, which you can only have after you begin. And so in some ways, making a decision is the perfect answer so that you can get the information
Feedback
to then improve the quality of the decision later. And I think that one loop is what a lot of people miss out on, is they obsess for years sometimes on the perfect pick, the perfect business, the perfect job, the perfect mate, when most of the times beginning each step illuminates the next step, which means the information, the feedback that you get from walking gives you more about where to walk than trying to sit at the beginning in the darkness and pick a direction.
Well, it's the difference as well, I think, between people who are super advanced, super developed, super far down the line and people who are beginning. It's like, dude, what are you risking by trying to do this thing? For you, it's fine for you to spend 18 months negotiating with Sam on the school deal.
Yeah.
But if you are yet to do any business, that's probably not necessarily the right way to go about things. Tim Ferriss says, in the short term, your success depends on your intensity. In the long term, your success depends on your consistency. Do not sacrifice the latter for the former.
What's wild about the fear that people have when they're starting out is that they say things like, I have nothing going for me. I have no advantages. I have nothing to my name. I have no money. I have no network. I have no resources. But using Rory Sutherland's reframing, it also means that you have nothing to lose, which makes you incredibly dangerous. And I think people wildly underestimate how many shots on goal you can take when you have nothing to lose. Whereas when someone has something to lose, they have to be more and more selective about the shots they take. And so you have the perfect conditions for taking risk, because the worst case scenario is baseline, is where you're currently at.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that
your
means,
downside is this.
which means that it's like going to the casino and playing craps, but they say that you can just keep playing until you win. But people are afraid to roll.
Reminder for anyone internally debating weekend plans. If you don't want to go, don't go. If they care whether you go or not, they don't care about you. And if they care about you, they don't care if you go or not. Just because you have free time doesn't mean anyone who asks for it is entitled to it.
I think the second part I want to start with, which is, if you see that you have an empty calendar, most people assume that if someone asks you for that time, it's therefore theirs. And it's only not theirs when someone else has claimed it, which means that your time only belongs to other people. And then you're surprised by the fact that your investment of time has yielded nothing for you when you've given the only and most valuable asset that you have to everyone else, who often give a very poor return on it for you. And so in the beginning, if you don't have money, the only thing you have is time. And so that is the only thing it's the only currency you can spend to improve yourself or get closer to your goals. And so if that's the one currency you have, then why on earth would you give it away?
I think it's genuinely right to say that your calendar is a better measure of your wealth than your bank account.
It's also the easiest way to know where someone's going to be in 5 years or even a year.
How so?
You just see where they're investing their time, and you can predict, like, more accurately what their life is going to look like in a year based on what they're doing today. And it's a good thing, for us. It's hard for me not to put the business stuff into it, but a reminder that the life that I'm living today is a result of the work that I did 6 and 12 months ago. And so if you were to look at my calendar 6 and 12 months ago, then you might extrapolate out to what I'm doing today. But just like people want the immediate reward, they also see their current condition as a result of the behavior they're doing today, when it's not at all. And so that's why I think having, in some ways, a very vivid imagination of, like, this is where I think the benefit of, quote, visualization comes into play. I don't see it as much as a benefit for, like, oh, I have to imagine this thing to happen, but I think it's more powerful to think, I'm doing this thing today and I'm imagining it happening. So it's an approximation of the feedback loop that you want to have. And so it helps you substitute and get through the period where nothing's actually happening.
This is, it was so cool to learn this. going to the gym is one of the very few pursuits that you can do where in the act of doing the thing, you get a brief window into what it will be like if you continue to do the thing. Yeah. If I go on Duolingo and try to learn Spanish, I don't briefly become much better at Spanish, like where I'm going to be at in 6 months or 12 months time. But if I go to the gym and get a pump on, I go, hey, that's me, hopefully, flat in 9 months time. Like how I look now at the end of the session is where I want to be toward the end of this year. And that reinforcement loop is so good. I genuinely think no one's spoken about this.
The pump preview.
Yeah. But like that, I think, is the feedback mechanism that makes the gym so compelling. It's one of the reasons why it makes the gym so compelling. You get this brief window into a future version of you and you go, fucking, dude, my delts look fucking awesome. I can't wait for that to be how I look when I wake up in the morning. And you go, okay, that's how I'm going to get there. And that's why it's so gratifying, right? It works in the moment and it works over the long term.
So one of my closest friends, or my closest friend, Dr. Kashi, and I talk about this. But the difference between experts and beginners is that experts have more ways to reward themselves in a given condition. And so if you think about an expert salesman, there are so many interactions they can have that they are good at that they can find rewarding and positively reinforcing. And so the goal is to develop enough skill that your external environment and conditions can deliver enough positive feedback that it can become self-sustaining.
Give me a tangible example.
So if you're an editor and you edit videos for a living, in the beginning, you have to, you watch a video and then you try the thing. And if it doesn't work, there is a feedback loop, it's null. And then you go back, you try it again, and then you do get a positive feedback. Oh, I made that transition happen. I made that color grading occur, whatever. I'm talking out of, you get the idea. There are some roles like sales and editing where there's a lot of people who are music, where people become passionate because there's enough fast feedback loops in the beginning where they can try something and then get good. A master musician can pick up any instrument and have positive feedback loops everywhere. And so the more you master any skill, the more ways you can win. And so and that's ultimately what makes the rich get richer, is that because everything is so positively reinforcing, because they start to develop skills, then they do more and more of it. And as they do more of it, the rich get richer, the better get better, the better become best. And then everyone who's starting out is like, how on God's earth does this guy have this work ethic? But it's really that he has high levels of skill. And all right, I'm going to go on a tangent here, but I think it's going to be worth it. So I think about everything in terms of skills. And I have more or less divorced myself from the words like feelings, psychology, intuition, whatever. I've just taken it out of my vocabulary and simple character traits and tried to focus ruthlessly on what are the actions that I can take to become patient. And if you say, hey, be patient, what does someone do, right? They have to figure out what to do in the meantime. That's the definition of patience. If you say, hey, be more charismatic, the problem with that directive is that it's a bundled term. And so I say charismatic, but what it really means is 12 skills underneath of it. That means that when you walk into a room, stand up straight. When you walk into a room, look everyone in the eyes. When you walk into a room, announce yourself, speak louder, shake people's hands and look at them while they're talking. When someone talks, nod your head. If you do all of these 12 behaviors or 15 behaviors, people will begin to describe you as charismatic. And in the path of personal development, we want to become more of these things, but we haven't chunked down the bundled term into the series of behaviors that create the description that people will then call us later. And I think by breaking things down, then it's not like, oh, I'm just not that, insert character trait. It's really, oh, I have not mastered these 12 skills. And so by doing that, it demystifies.
Much more precise.
Exactly. This is from a business perspective, also really good for training employees. So like, for example, on our team, I was like, Caleb was the first person who did video with me that I ever enjoyed. And so I was like, why? And then somebody else came in and I was like, I'm not having as much fun in these sessions. And I'd like to recreate the conditions of success. And so how can I make it so that I
operationalize fun?
Exactly. And
the most Alex Hormozy thing I've ever heard. Hey guys, let's operationalize fun for a moment.
And so we had to, but then this is the part that everyone misses, is that you then have to look with a microscope and say, what are all the little things that Caleb does that other people don't do? And so it turned out when he was behind the camera, he would be nodding his head. And if I said a banger line, he would stick his thumb out. And so I'd get these many positive reinforcement loops while I was recording. And then as soon as I was done, he would come over and be like, dude, that was fire. And then he would take out his phone and have all of these really interesting follow-ups because I could see that he was actively listening and he had thoughts. And so then when we retrained the team, we said, hey, when Alex is talking, nod your head slowly so he sees that you're actively listening. If he says something cool, do one of these, give them a thumbs up. And then all of a sudden, my recording sessions without Caleb became as good as my recording sessions with Caleb. And we operationalized Calebism, right? And so I could say, I just need you to be more like Caleb, but that's not helpful to somebody. But if I said, I need you to do all these things, then I can operationalize that. The reason I'm hitting on this so hard is because this has been such a core change in how I see the world. And it has been so useful in terms of bending reality to what I would like it to be, because there's this huge disconnect between what people want, how they describe what they want, and what it takes for that to occur. And by being able to look with detail about the character traits or the things that people who are better than you at a certain thing do, you can then stop being like, man, people think I'm a dick. It's like, well, if someone says stop being a dick, not helpful. I mean, good to know that whatever I'm doing is not working, but doesn't give me any active directions. And so we just try to break down adacquisition.com, but in general, and for myself, what is the 18 things that I have to do? And oftentimes it's significantly more things, but they're also much easier than you think. If I just said, I need you to nod your head while you're going on camera, it's not that complicated to understand. And so when you break it down that way, all of a sudden you wrap your arms around it and you're like, oh, so this is what it takes in order for me to be an exceptional videographer. This is what it takes for me to be an exceptional podcaster. I'm sure, and we call it like, this is why I love living by checklists. But right now, if I were to say, hey, what makes a good podcast? You'd be like, probably about 128 things or more, right? But everyone on the outside says, you're so natural on camera. You ask such thought-provoking questions. Like, man, you just get the best guests, right? And you're like, sure. And so but the thing is I think this is the mysticism. This is the unknown that the beginners or the people who are at the very beginning of their path don't understand, is that there is no magic. There is no mysticism. There is no spirituality around this. Everything comes down to behavior. And by doing that, you can take out all of the hullabaloo, all of the voodoo that unfortunately is so prevalent on social media. And so when you hear the podcast clips and whatever of people saying you just need to be more this, if they haven't described it by a behavior, it is useless. And so this has allowed me to also separate signal from noise when I'm consuming content in general. Or if I want to learn something, I'm immediately thinking, well, what does this mean that I have to do? And if someone can't break it down into the behaviors, then they don't know either. And they may be very good at the thing, but they may be very bad at teaching it. And being able to separate those two skills, because those are skills too, being able to transfer a skill is a skill, will allow you to audit who you're listening to so that you can get the highest return on your effort, because then you know that you're doing activities that lead to the outcome that you want.
We have this big nebulous term of anything, let's call it confidence. And then there's these component parts that confidence is made up of. And only by defining those can you actually bring it closer to you. Yeah, I think, in terms of getting people past the paralysis of be confident, like what the fuck does that even mean? Where do I start? What are the component parts of confidence? And yeah, breaking down any big thing into small manageable steps is kind of the key to achieving large goals. Breaking down nebulous concepts into high resolution, very tangible, very obvious individual skills. I really like that. I really like that.
I think it may be the single is tough. One of the largest correlates to what has worked for me in my life. Because a lot of this obsession around this, and you probably know more about it off camera than people can hear on camera, has come from me fundamentally not understanding the world. And so I put so much effort into trying to understand when people would say, stop being that way, or you're really cocky, or you're really arrogant. And I was like, how do I not be that? And are you really distractible? Or you're really, you're scattered. And these are all things that it hurts when you hear these things, but you're like, okay, but what do I do? And so I would encourage you, if you have either negative traits that you're trying to get rid of or positive traits that you're trying to accrue or become more like, to simply demystify it by breaking it down into the behaviors. And when you do that, you'll realize that though there may be many variables in that there are lots of little things that it takes, they're usually not nearly as complex as you'd think. And so then you just start looking at it as a checklist and saying, okay, people think I'm arrogant when I begin talking to them about how much money I make. Okay, so I have two options. I can either be around people who like talking about money and don't see it as arrogant, or when I'm around people who I think have a high likelihood of that and I care about their opinion for some reason, then I won't begin that way. And then all of a sudden, fewer and fewer people begin to describe you as arrogant. Now, you are still the same, but people describe you less in those terms. And so I'll give you a different example. It's completely off the wall here. So one that was really helpful for me was defining love. And so the problem with the English or all languages is that there's many words that mean the same thing. And so we can look up Webster's dictionary or whatever, but if you actually look at the definitions, I think most words are actually poorly defined, because if you just define them by what someone has to do, then most definitions fall short. And many of them, if you'll find online, are circular, right? But like likingness and loving to me are a continuum. It's not like I like this person, I love this person, it just exists on this I hate to, I really like. Cool. Now, if I were to say I love you, what does that mean operationally? So for me, I define love by what I'm willing to give up to maintain my relationship with something or someone. And so by using that definition, I was able to see, maybe I don't love my family as much as I thought, because I'm actually not willing to give up very much in order to maintain this relationship. And I might actually love my friend, or I may love my coworkers a lot more than I love my family if we use the definition of what I'm willing to give up in order to keep it. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, I love my goals more than I love anyone. I'm not willing to give up my goals in order to maintain a relationship. And so I actually, when I realized this, I sat down with Layla and I was like, hey, I think I love my goals more than I love you.
How did that go down?
Great. Because she was like, my whole goal in life has been to help you accomplish your goals. And I think the reason that we've had such an aligned relationship is that both of us want to help the other person achieve their goals. And in so doing, then you're aligned. And it's like, wow, I would give up everything to maintain peace. Because if Layla is the person on earth that helps me accomplish my goals more than anyone else, and my goals mean more to me than anything else, then
Layla is now the conduit between
Yes.
the two. Yeah, she's like Inception mind fucked you into.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now some people get really uncomfortable by me saying that, but
It sounds transactional in
yes,
some ways.
and it is. And I believe in transactions and relationships in general. But when we sat, like, for some reason in marriage, it sounds weird, but on a first date, the first thing you share is, these are my goals. This is what I want to do. Like, is that at all interesting to you? Because if you're not aligned with where I'm trying to go, then maybe we shouldn't walk in this path together. But for some reason later, that no longer applies. I believe what you apply on first date should also apply on 10 years in. At least that's what's worked for us. And if there's ever been a moment where we're like, hey, we feel off kilter here, this feels like it's conflicting with our earlier agreement, then we reconcile it, right? And so I bring this up because there are so many terms like loyalty, trust, and I spend a lot of time trying to define these terms so that I can say, not do I trust this person, but how much do I trust this person? This person is honest or not? No, how honest is this person? And the only way that you can know someone is honest is if they've had the opportunity to lie, where it's not socially beneficial for them, where they lose status by still being integrous and saying what really occurred. And so I have this massive list on my phone. It's got all the terms that I refer to frequently, but I would encourage you to define them by what behavior you have to do.
Have you got your phone on you now?
Yeah.
Can you pull up one and give us a term
Sure.
that you like to look
I'll
at?
give a phone one. I have tons. This is fun.
It's words, and that's one of the things that I appreciate is anybody that spends enough time crafting words and thinking about them precisely ends up having a very accurate view of the world, because all of the fluffiness that comes about, we mediate our experience through languge. And then what? You've got a shit-eating grin on your face.
Oh, I've just got so many.
Okay, well, pick one of your favorites.
I'll do three of them. Two of them that are related, and then a third one. All right. So this will be really good. This will be nasty for the people who are listening at home. So learning means same condition, new behavior. So phone rings, you answer the phone, you say ABC. I say, cool. Read this script instead that says DEF. Phone rings, same condition. You say DEF, you have learned. Same condition, new behavior. Intelligence is rate of learning. It's speed. It's a measurement of speed. And so it means how many times do you need to be exposed to the same condition in order to change your behavior? If I teach someone something, that script, and then on the first try, they say DEF, and someone else, it takes 5 tries for them to say DEF, they are not as intelligent as the first person. Here's why this is interesting. Every person who's listening to this right now has listened to 1,000 fucking podcasts, and they're in the exact same condition, and yet they have not changed their behavior, which means 1, they have not learned, and 2, they are dumb. Which also means that if you can control your behavior, you can also control how intelligent you are. And so if you want to be a smart cookie, then it means that you just decrease the amount of times that you do not change your behavior under the same conditions. And so when I think about this, when I teach my team, when I teach anyone, I think in these conditions. And so every time you watch or you consume a piece of content, you read a book, if you think, what behavior am I going to change as a result of this? If the answer is nothing, you wasted your time and you pretended to be learning, but you were really entertaining yourself. And so that frame has been incredibly helpful for me to speed up how quickly I take action, because I don't want to be a dodo bird. So that's two different ones, learning and intelligence. One that I've been thinking a lot about with Dr. K and I, we go back and forth, is motivation. So I'll tell you a story and then I'll bring it around. So I was at an event and a young lady said, Alex, can you just give me 60 seconds of motivation? And of course it's like, dance monkey dance. And so I took a deep breath and I was like, define motivation. And she just like melted. She had no idea, right? I was like, so you want me to answer a question or make a statement about something that you can't even define. And so how would you have any idea of whether or not I actually did it? And so then I probably gave her the answer she really wanted, which was, let me define motivation for you. So motivation is the equal opposite of deprivation. So we are most motivated when we are deprived of something. I'm most motivated to sleep when I'm sleep deprived. I'm most motivated to eat when I'm deprived of food. I'm most motivated to have sex when I haven't had sex in a while. Now, that logic carries for physiological needs. But then when you get into psychological things or intangible constructs, so like, let's think about money. By that same logic, you'd think, oh, poor people should be more motivated because they're deprived of money. But that we don't see that in reality. Many poor people are not that motivated. So it would then follow, and I've seen some incredibly rich people who are wildly hungry for money. And so then it would follow that the deprivation comes from our reference point because money is intangible. And so it's how much do we perceive our deprivation around money? And so if all of my friends are billionaires and I'm worth $100 million, then I have a $900 million deficit that I have to come up. I'm $900 million poorer than the person who just is at $5,000 a month who wants to make $10,000 a month. I'm more motivated to make money than they are because I'm more deprived of it. And so in thinking about this, I then think, okay, what am I deprived of? That motivates me to go get it. And also, when I want to try and judge the behavior of others or predict their behavior, I have to think, what things are they deprived of? Because I have a much stronger predictive power than trying to say, how do I motivate this person? Look at what they lack.
It's a much more accurate way to predict the things that people are going to chase after.
It's operationalized. What do they do?
So I found this quote from Timothy Leary, and it's really fantastic. I think that you'll like this. Find the others. Admit it, you aren't like them. You're not even close. You may occasionally dress yourself up as one of them, watch the same mindless television shows as they do, maybe even eat the same fast food sometimes. But it seems that the more you try to fit in, the more you feel like an outsider. Watching normal people as they go about their automatic existences. For every time you say club passwords like, have a nice day and weather's awful today, eh? You yearn inside to say forbidden things like, tell me something that makes you cry, or what do you think deja vu is for? Face it, you even want to talk to that girl in the elevator. But what if that girl in the elevator and the balding man who walks past your cubicle at work are thinking the same thing? Who knows what you might learn from taking a chance on a conversation with a stranger? Everybody carries a piece of the puzzle. Nobody comes into your life by mere coincidence. Trust your instincts, do the unexpected, find the others.
There's many Matrix undertones here. I think we might have covered this on a past podcast, but the idea that many people want to be exceptional, but they're afraid of being an exception, I think is such a it's wanting an outcome without the requirement that the outcome has. And so we can't do the same thing that everyone else approves of and then somehow get a different outcome that everyone else does. And so I think that's why high agency for me is something that I look for in other people, which is, asking someone, why do you believe what you believe? And we talked about this yesterday, but if you have a belief and you can't explain why you believe it, it's not yours, it's someone else's. And most people walk around parroting other people's words for the vast majority of their lives. And so they basically act as recorders where they click record at one point of their life and then they click play in another time in their life and they're just clicking record, play over and over again. And the reason there's that, in my opinion, that other self that's behind it is because none of those words are yours. And so it makes sense that people feel alone and they feel like they're acting because they never say what they think. And as a result, they also sound like everyone else because they were never themselves to begin with.
It's those first three lines. Admit it, you aren't like them, you're not even close. And it sounds quite sort of self-aggrandizing or kind of narcissistic in a way to, you're considering yourself as being above other people. I don't think it's to do with that. I think it's that so many people curtail themselves and optimize for a mean that may not exist. They're reverting to a mean that's just a figment of everybody's imagination. And the only reason that people coalesce there is because other people think that other people are going to coalesce there. The Keynesian beauty contest?
No.
Same as that, basically.
I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay. So Keynesian beauty contest is people make judgments on not who they think is the most beautiful, but on who they think other people think are the most beautiful. And then knowing that other people know that other people are going to make that decision based on that, you end up with this infinite regress of trying to predict things. This is what's happening with politics, right? It's not about picking the person that you want in your area. It's about making the most tactical pick to ensure that overall, accounting for the other people and what they're going to choose, that the person that you really don't want in power doesn't get the seat in your area, but somebody else in some other area. So when you have this sort of recursive, but it happens socially too. I say the thing that I think that you want to hear, knowing that you know that I could say the thing that I want, but so what I say is some mediator halfway between what I want to say and what I think you want to hear from me. And it just ends up with people, nobody being themselves and everybody being some weird simulacrum of what they think everybody else wants them to be.
And if we go back to motivation, the question is, what, quote, motivates people to do this, right, or to behave in this way? And so most times it's fear of something, right? And so they're afraid of something in their minds. But when you actually play it out, which is one of my favorite frames in the world, which is, let's take this to the hypothetical extreme, or let's play it out two more plays, two more turns. And most times you end up getting way closer to what you really want the moment after the bad thing that you think will happen happens. And so we've discussed that there's so many amazing things that have happened in my life and your life and many people's lives that happened immediately after they get out. They have something bad happen that gets them out of that realm of just barely good enough, but not really. And so we have this fear of disrupting the just barely good enough, but not really, but you're also already miserable. And so the fear of disrupting your misery feels ridiculous. And so when you think about it like that, right? So when you think about it like that, exactly. The only thing we have to lose is the current misery of mediocrity that we're trudging through every day. And so worst case, you're just also still miserable, but maybe you won't be mediocre anymore because at least you won't be like everyone else. But there's also a possibility that you are not miserable and also not mediocre. And by doing that, you might also just start seeing who you really are, because I think a great portion of our identity comes from the proof that we give ourselves of the things that we've done and said in the past. And so if we want to build towards a different version of ourselves, and it begins with accruing, stacking evidence that aligns with that future self. And so in some ways, break the plate, take the shot, get rejected.
Well,
because when you do that, then again, the worst case is you have a broken plate, but you didn't like that plate to begin with.
It is astounding how many people want to be spectacular in life, but also want to fit in and be normal. Like, by being normal, you are, by definition, aiming for average. Normal people get normal results. Weird people get weird results. You literally can't do what everyone else does and not expect to get what everyone else has. By doing what everyone else does, you guarantee average results.
It's your brother, your mom, your friend, the one comment they're going to say, you've changed. Why are you doing another kick like this? Oh, you're going to try that now. Okay, here we go again. And the thing is that it's not about them being right or wrong. Again, it's about how right and how wrong they could be. And so, for example, let's say you wanted to start a podcast in the past and you did 3 episodes and then you fell off. And then they think, I told you so. Stop with these dreams. Stop with this crazy content stuff. You're never going to become an influencer, or whatever your goal is. Replace influencer with whatever your thing is. The thing is that you are still closer having done 3 than having done 0. And so it's just about directional correctness and realizing that criticizers are more often correct, but when it matters most, incorrect. And so this is where frequency and intensity become flipped. So somebody, from the investment world, it's like, okay, if I take 10 bets and I lose 9, some people might say he must be a bad investor. But the question is, how much did I lose on the 9 and how much did I make on the 1? And the best investors in the world understand the benefits of outsized returns, both on the upside and the downside. And so, meaning the perfect way of betting is having no downside and having unlimited upside. You want to make as many of those bets as you can. And in the beginning, that is literally what you have. And so the problem is you have a bet that you take, you make 3 podcasts, and you didn't stick with it. And so then criticizer gets 1 point, but you lost nothing. You maybe even gained a little bit of skill and you gained some experience, which means you're actually still better off than you were when you started. So it is a 0-loss game by choosing to begin.
That's the thing about cynics. Right 99% of the time and wrong 100% of the time.
I use this example because I think it really drives it home. So if you have judgmental parents or judgmental friends or judgmental whatevers, and you date people and you bring them home, if they say, I don't think this is the girl for you, they're right every single time, your entire life, except for the one person that you decide to marry. And then they are absolutely wrong at the time that it mattered most. And the thing is they get to say on your 6th girlfriend and 7th girlfriend and 8th girlfriend, because let's face it, you've been alive for a while. I have a perfect guess. I'm right 100% of the time. We'll see how long this one lasts. And 2 years in, they're like, see, you finally broke up with her. I told you at the beginning it wasn't going to last. Well, it never fucking lasts except for the one that's going to stick. Duh. And the business never works until it's the one that does. And the episode doesn't take off except for the one that does. And whether it's 10 or 10,000, eventually one does, because when you do more, you get better at doing.
Which is why not quitting is the best skill.
and the only thing that matters. Because by default, with an infinite game perspective, which I
You win.
encourage everyone to have, the point of the game is to keep the game going. It's the only objective. Because even if I obviously come from the business world, so even if your goal was to be number one at business, it's like by what metric? Enterprise value, growth, profit, revenue, all of a sudden, okay, maybe it's richest man in the world. Okay, for how long? Look at the history of mankind. Not one person has ever been richest man forever. And so you get to touch the top, even if you're that one guy for a moment, and then it's gone again. And so you can't have that as the endpoint because it is by its very nature finite. But the competitor whose objective is to continue to play can't be beaten because by playing, he wins.